Hello and welcome. This is Jennifer. I'm glad you're here. I apologize. It's been a while since I've done a video. I actually filmed this one a while ago and I'm just now getting it up onto YouTube. We've been doing some college visits with my son and things are just a little busy around here. But today I have a lot to share with you, lots of cards. We're going to be doing some fun layering stenciling, lots of tips for that. And I'm sharing ideas for adding details and the look of dimension without the bulk on your cards. So these are things that can be used for any cards, but I'm focusing on layering stencils for the bulk of them. My first three cards are on dark colors of cardstock, so I have tips for how to make your layering stencils work on those dark colors, and also some ideas for adding details. Now for all of these cards today, I'm using some layering stencils from Spellbinders. These are brilliant stencils. I just think they are so much fun, so easy to use, and many ways you can use them. They also have a coordinating die available, which allows you to pop out the sentiment in the center, although I'm not really doing that on most of my cards today. I wanted to go for one layer or minimal layered cards. You may also notice that these stencils come with the mask for the sentiment in the center also, which is really handy if you want to get selective with your inking, so you'll see me demonstrate that today. Keep in mind there are many ways to use these layering stencils. I'm just showing a few options, and these techniques will work with other layering stencils. And by the way, notice that these Spellbinders layering stencils have little notches in the corner of each of the stencils. So if you put pencil marks in those notches on the first stencil, you'll know that all the others will layer up perfectly if you line up those notches. Today I will also be using the R MemoryMagnetic Platform. Now you've seen me use many different methods to hold my stencils and cardstock in place. All of them work wonderfully. This is one that I've been using off screen a lot and really like. Now this is magnetic. One side actually has a cutting surface, that's the gray side, and the other side is very magnetic. So this will really hold your stencils in place. I also like that it comes with this magnetic ruler, which you'll see is very handy. You can use your own bar magnets on it that you use with your MISTI, but it does come with two round magnets with a little handle on them, which are very handy. So please keep in mind you can use whatever method you want with layering stencils. This is just another one. I really like it, so you'll see me use it again in future videos. You have also seen in many of my videos different ways to line up layering stencils. This is another and works great if you're doing multiple cards or multiple layers that line up easily. So I have taken a note card and opened it up and laid it onto my magnetic surface, and I put tape at the corner of it. That way I know if I place my cardstock or my card into that little nook that I created with the tape, that it'll line up each time. So now I'm coming in with the first layering stencil, and I put a piece of tape along the bottom of it to create a hinge. This is really handy if you plan to use the same stencil to make multiple cards. I'll be making 3 colored cards here. And notice how handy that magnetic ruler is along the top. Now over this first layering stencil, I'm putting Hero Art's Unicorn White Pigment ink. Any white pigment ink will work. And when I apply this ink over a stencil, I like to use a Tim Holtz ink blending tool, which has a foam applicator. It allows me to really press that ink into the openings. Notice that I'm pressing firmly and kind of twisting to get as much of that white ink down that I can. So this is the first of the layering stencil, and I know that because it's the most open. You can see that all of the openings are the biggest of all the stencils I'm using, and I'm putting white down for that base. The reason I'm putting down white is that it softens this bold background color in those areas, and then I can put darker color on top of it, and it'll show up a bit more. So notice that I took my second note card, I opened it up, and then I lined it up in that little nook in the bottom left corner where I put those 2 little pieces of yellow tape. And then I just flipped my stencil down on top of it and did the same inking. So I'll do the same process again. We have a third note card. I put it in that little nook on the bottom left, put my stencil up and ink over this. So by setting up my stencil like this with a hinge, I'm able to create multiple cards, and it saves time in kind of lining up the stencil each time. To clean ink off of a stencil is super easy. I have a bottle of rubbing alcohol and I do one quick spray and then I wipe it off with a dry cloth. This works great with any inks. If you're using a gel or paste, I do recommend washing that off in the sink. So now I will heat set all of this white pigment ink. The reason I'm heat setting it is we're going to put ink on top of it and I don't want any of that white pigment ink to transfer off as we do inking on top. All right, so now it's time for the next layering stencil. I'm lining it up just as we did before. Create a new hinge here on the bottom of this stencil and start to ink. Now over the white ink, this is the second layer, over that white ink we just put down, I'm putting a medium color of ink that kind of matches the note card in the background. Any dye ink would work here, distress ink would work, oxide ink would work, and even pigment ink would work. But I like dye ink because it shows up very dark on that white that we have underneath. Now we are putting this on top of a white pigment ink, and the white pigment ink may kind of transfer a little bit to your blending brush. And if you're worried about transferring that onto your ink pad, what you can do is press your ink pad onto a slick surface like this glass mat that I'm working on, and then pick up the ink from there so that your brush doesn't touch the ink pad. But honestly, I did not notice any white ink transferring onto my brush, so I wasn't concerned with it. You may notice that some of the flowers are very dark. That's because there is no white under that. The first layer of the stencil didn't put ink down in that area. So that blue ink is going directly onto the blue card, making it darker there. So there you can see some areas it overlapped and some areas it didn't, giving beautiful results. It looks like you used 3 inks at this point, but you've only used 2. Now I will clean off my stencil and slide in the next color card, just putting it in that little nook that we created with the yellow tape. Over this, I'll apply a medium pink color. This is Pinkfresh Bubblegum ink. And you'll notice some areas it'll be darker because it's going directly onto the colored cardstock. And some areas it'll be lighter because the white pigment ink is underneath. Then I will do the same thing on the third card. This is Passion Fruit. So we're starting to build up those layers. All right, now it's time to go back to the first card, and this is the third of the layering stencils. So I'm lining that up, and over this I'm putting a dark dye ink. So this is the same color I used before, but a darker shade. And this will show up even more bold, and look at how we're building up those layers. Now each time I switch to the next card, I do clean off my stencil because there's that dark ink on it, but I keep the hinge in place so that I can quickly move to the right position on the next one. So I did the same thing with the dark ink over this third stencil on each of the cards. Now it's time for the fourth stencil. This one gives the most detail, so the smallest openings on the stencil. And over this one, I'm applying Honeybee Silver Metallic ink. This is definitely my favorite silver ink right now, and it goes on very thick. It's a pigment ink, so it goes on thick, almost kind of paint-like, but it's not. It's an ink, and you really want to put that down very heavily. I have an ink blending brush designated just to this ink, so I only use it for the silver. And so I put that generously over that fourth layer, and look at how that silver just adds some fun shine. Now, if you really want this to be super shiny silver, you could put silver embossing powder on it, but I wanted it to be kind of a matte silver, and it is perfect for that final layer. Now, because I use pigment ink, that silver ink is pigment, we're going to heat set that because we don't want it to smear at this point. While I heat set this, I did want to mention, from now on with that silver pigment ink, I'm going to switch to using an ink blending tool. I find a foam applicator stays more within the lines of the stencil than a blending brush when you're using pigment ink. So I definitely will use a foam applicator in the future. Okay, so now for some details. One of the best ways to add details without any bulk to your card is to use a white gel pen, a clear glaze pen, or a Stardust glitter pen. So there are 3 different options, and I will demonstrate each of these today. First, let's use the white gel pen. There are many on the market. I happen to like the Arteza brand. I just think they work really well. They have some fine tip options. What I do for dots of detail is just kind of dab the ink onto the paper, and you can go over the same area more than once if you let it dry between, if it didn't give you like a complete white line or dot. But I find these pens work really well. So I'm just adding little detailed white dots all around my image at the center of some of the flowers, and this just makes everything pop even more. Because we use layering stencils, it also looks like we have a lot of dimension here, but it is a perfectly smooth one layer card. That's one of the greatest advantages of layering stencils and layering stamps is it gives you that look of dimension. I just find layering stencils are super easy to use. All right, now here I'm using the glitter pen, the Stardust glitter pen, and I was kind of tracing different areas. You can see it sparkle there. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? I did end up filling in the letters. I didn't like the look of that in the end, but I went with it. But notice how you can really add so much shine to your project. It's just those little details that make a big difference in the end. And so usually I do things like add little dots or add little details to the flowers, like I did earlier with the white gel pen, but I used the glitter pen. This is kind of a silvery glitter, or kind of a champagne-y glitter, so it works with any card color you may have. And by the way, I will demonstrate all of these pens additional times in this video so you'll get a closer look. Now here I'm using the clear glaze pen. This is very subtle. It's not like glossy accents that gives you a lot of dimension and a lot of shine. This is subtle kind of finish to your images. You can kind of see it there in the center of the blue flower. Super subtle, but it gives you a bit of shine. I will say of the three pens, I use this one the least, but it is a nice option. Okay, here is a closer look at the completed card. So on this one, I did the white gel pen details and also that clear glaze, which if you look here on the dark blue little buds there, you can see a little bit of that shine. If you want more shine than that, you could definitely use glossy accents. Here is a closer look at the coral color card. This is definitely my favorite of them. On this one, I did just the white gel pen, but I feel like the details that you get from the gel pen and the depth that you get from the layering stencils and that silver pigment ink really make this one layer card stand out. By the way, when I do colored note cards, I do cut a white cardstock insert for the inside just to give it a nice finished look and for a place to write my personal message. But you could skip that and use a white gel pen for your personal message if you prefer. Now here is the orchid colored card. Now this is the one where I use that glitter pen to fill in the word for you. And I also, if you look around it, I scattered a few little dots that I made using that glitter pen just for added sparkle. Now that we've done some examples on colored cardstock, let's look at more traditional layering stencil cards on white cardstock. This time I'm going to do some really fun selective inking to add a lot of color to this. I have some tips for that, and I'll be sharing some ideas for adding bling without any bulk. I still have my magnetic platform set up from before, and I'm lining up the Hello stencils. I'm starting with the first one that has the most open area, and I'm placing that just like we did last time, using those corner marks to help me line it up and creating a hinge on the bottom. Now remember that there is the mask itself for the word in the center. I'm using that this time so that I can ink all the flowers around it without inking that open area where it says hello. So I'm just using a magnet to hold that mask there. You could also use a Post-it note to hold it there, a little temporary adhesive, lots of things that you can do. Now I am also taking a Post-it note and putting the sticky side against my fingers. I like to do that when I'm inking because I can move that Post-it note around and mask off different areas so I can get selective inking just where I want it. Now I'm using a smaller detailed blending brush from Altenew. Smaller brushes are very handy if you want to do multiple colors over a stencil. And this time I'm using Hero Art's Green Apple ink. It's a dye or hybrid ink. You could use any inks for this. Now every once in a while I'll hold this up to the camera so you can better see. Everything is white on white here, so it's kind of hard to see when it's laying flat. But I'm just going to move my Post-it note so that I'm masking the other areas around it, and I'm able to only get the leaves green. Now if you want to save time, you could do the same color over all of this like I did on the previous cards. I did the same color over one whole stencil. But when you take the time to do selective inking like this, it really makes your card stand out even more. Especially when you're doing a one-layer card, it really adds a lot. Now, if you do not have small blending tools like this, maybe you have sponge daubers. A lot of people used to use those a lot. That would work. You could also use a bigger brush. You'll just have to be a little more careful with your masking that you do with the Post-it note. So there you can see I did the green leaves only with that green apple color. For this set of cards, I'm doing 3 or 4 cards the same. So all of them will be done in the same inking. So before I move on to another color, I'm just going to easily switch out the note card and do the same green inking on this one. I find that easier than stopping, cleaning the stencil, switching ink colors, and then doing it again with the next card. So if you plan to make more than one card at a time using layering stencils, I definitely recommend doing this hinge trick and just doing one color over each stencil and moving on to the next card and repeating that. So after I've done this on all of my cards, I will remove the cards and clean the stencil, but I'll leave that hinge in place because remember, we only inked over the leaves. We want to ink over the other openings. So there's no reason to remove that little hinge on the bottom, but I will clean those parts because I'm switching to a pink ink and I don't want to get green ink in those areas. So now we're resetting everything up, just putting that note card in, putting the stencil down, and then putting that hello mask at the center. This time I'm using a favorite pink color of mine. This is Sparkling Rose from Pinkfresh Studio, and I'm applying this over the flower openings on this stencil. Now you may notice that I'm using different inks from different companies. This is something that I encourage all card makers to do. There is no reason to stick to one line of ink. There are a lot of amazing ink lines out there, and especially with dye inks. There are a lot of dye inks out there and a lot of beautiful colors. So I encourage you to not think so much about the brand of ink you're using, but the colors that you like. The green apple from Hero Arts happens to be a favorite green of mine, and this Pinkfresh Studio Sparkling Rose is a favorite pink of mine. So I always like to reach for the color I want, not necessarily the brand name. This is why I'm very hesitant to answer when people ask me if you could get one line of ink, what would it be? Because I think it just depends on the colors you like, especially if you're looking for just a traditional dye ink. Pinkfresh has bright, happy inks. Hero Arts has like a nice collection that covers everything. Gina K has more classic colors. Every company has something different to offer, and they're all building their color selection. So I really just recommend to reach for the colors you like the best. All right, so I finished off doing that first stencil over all 3 of my cards. Now we're on to the second stencil, and once again, I'm placing that hello mask over the center. I'm doing that so I can later ink all of the word hello on each of the stencils with a teal color ink instead. Now I know doing this selective inking does take more time than doing one color over the entire stencil, but I really think it allows you to get more from your layering stencils. If you prefer, you could do one card at a time and put masking tape over the different areas instead of using a moving Post-it note like this. But by using this moving Post-it note, it really saves me a lot of time. And notice that I can press down on my stencil with my left hand, and I'm not putting my fingers in the ink. That Post-it note is keeping me from getting ink where I don't want it. So I will do this process with the bubblegum ink on all 3 of my cards. Then I will clean the stencil and put the first card back in and apply a green ink over the leaf openings. This time I'm using Hero Arts Fresh Lawn ink, which is a great like grass green or Kelly green. Another idea for saving time when doing selective inking like this is instead of using ink and an inking tool, try using a marker. I could use a green marker and just trace into these openings and get a very similar effect. So you just kind of trace and color it in. And that would be maybe a lot faster than kind of moving a mask around and inking only where you want it. So you might want to try different options and see what works best for you. Same goes for the surface that you work on when you're inking and stenciling. I've shown using a sticky mat, using a stencil mat, and here I'm using a magnetic platform. I would just watch and think about the way you work and what might be best for you to try. Now at this point, I thought I'd go ahead and do the hello over the stencil. I forgot to do it over the first one, but here I'm using Hero Arts Paradise, which is a great medium kind of teal color, and I'll do that over each. I'm not worrying much about masking around it because I'm using that smaller inking tool, and I can grab that little Post-it note as a mask if I need to. Now it's time to move to the next stencil, which adds the most detail, the smallest open areas. I'm going to start with the hello this time so I don't forget about it. This time I'm using a darker teal color. This is Bermuda from Hero Arts. And again, using that small inking tool and then just masking off anytime I get too close to another open area. If you are worried about messing up at this point, you could definitely put tape down before you start inking and just leave that tape there as you do all 3 stencils. You just want to play around and see what works best for you. I try to show different methods for all types of things, such as masking in my videos, so you get different ideas. All right, so now I have done that dark teal on all 3. It's time to do the flowers on this stencil also. I'm going to mask up that teal so I don't get any pink on it. And we're coming in with a darker pink here. This is a raspberry color from Pinkfresh Studios. By the way, as I do all this inking, I'm trying to throw a lot of tips out there for you just to make good use of your time. If you have never tried layering stencils, I highly recommend it. If you tape your stencil down good enough, they're pretty much foolproof. When I want to teach a new crafter, such as when my new mother-in-law came to my house several months ago to learn how to craft, I started with layering stencils. It gives you that wow, aha moment like you got the first time you ever heat embossed. And it is much easier. It's a great place to start, and the results are always great. So if you've ever been hesitant to try layering stencils, I encourage you to do so. Great for beginners too. All right, now here I'm back to that first stencil. Remember how I forgot to do the hello on that? This time I used Hero Arts Mist, which is a really light color, and that kind of gives an outline for all of the hello word. Now we're on to the final stencil. This one is going to give us a shadow for the hello and the final little details for the little flowers. For those detail flowers, I'm using yellow, which is Butterbar from Hero Arts, one of my favorite all-time kind of warm yellows. And as I do this, I did want to mention, if you are new to layering stencils, I do recommend layering stencils like this one, where there are multiple stencils that line up simply by lining up the outside edge of the stencil. There are more complicated layering stencils out there where there are several layers on one stencil, so you have to kind of shift it. I wouldn't start there. I would start with a simple one. This is a great example, and you will realize just how easy the layering stencils are to use, and you can use whatever inks you have. Okay, so I did a dark raspberry jam from Hero Arts on some of those flower details also, and we are in the home stretch here. We have the shadow for the hello to do. That's the last thing. And I thought I'd use Hero Arts Granite ink, which I have used for so many years. It's a nice soft gray that really matches just about anything. It's not too cool, it's not too warm, and I thought it would be nice for the shadow on this hello. And look at these results. It would have taken me much longer to stamp those individual images. So quick to do this, and it looks like it's got a lot of dimension. Thanks to these well-designed layering stencils, I got 3 one-layer cards that are ready to go. But you know me, I like to add a few details. One detail I thought I'd share with you is sometimes I would just want little flowers here and there in the background, or little stars here and there to fill in spots. So I'm taking one of those stencils that has a little flower and masking off everything around it with some tape. And then over that little flower alone, I'm adding some Butterbar yellow ink. And I'll fill this little flower in some of the openings around this flower cluster. This is a great way to add more of a color if you want. Here I wanted more of that yellow. You could also mask off little flowers and put them on the inside of your card so it matches the outside, or on your envelope flap. Totally can skip this step, but this is to encourage you to look at your stencils and see if you could maybe mask off something and use that small area as an accent or fill-in. Now, before I show you several ideas for adding shine and sparkle without dimension, I did create some more cards. I did these thank you cards. I'm not going to show the whole process because it's very similar to what I did with the hello cards. I created the hinge. I did 3 cards. I did selective inking, gray for that shadow layer, and I end up with 3 additional cards, these being a thank you theme. And then finally, I did one Make-A-Wish card, a great birthday card. I did a lot of selective inking for the confetti in the background, just making sure that I was able to put as many different colors as possible to really make the card stand out. And with these little circles, it's easy. You just use a small blending tool and you don't even have to bother masking. Now this time I didn't bother with the word mask at the center. I don't care if I get ink there because this time on this one card, I will die cut out the words Make-A-Wish and pop it on top. So I don't have to worry about getting ink in those center areas. On the other cards, I really wanted a one layer card, but this is the only one where I added dimension with that sentiment in the center. Now again, I'm not showing you all the steps just to save time. It's very similar to what I did on the hello cards. Using the same stencils, I inked up the Make-A-Wish portion at the center on a separate piece of white cardstock. I used the coordinating die to cut it out and then glued 2 additional die cuts behind it for dimension and then added it to the center of the card. Now you could have done this with the hello and thank you cards and then you wouldn't have to bother with the masking in the center. But again, with those other cards, I was trying to go for a one layer no bulk card. Okay, so now I'm taking the hello, thank you, and Make-A-Wish cards and adding some sparkle to them without adding much bulk. There are several different ideas I'm going to share with you, and you could choose one that might work best for you, or maybe try out some others if you're interested. The first idea is to use flat embellishments or confetti to add to your card. There are many options out there. Usually I use gems or pearls that have dimension, but these are options that are flat. My favorite is the Studio Katia Vintage Sparkle Crystals. These are like flat little sequins without a hole in the center, and it has beautiful gold shine to it. I didn't actually use those today, but I've used them a lot in videos in the past. Another great option is Disco Fever discs from Studio Katia, perfectly flat, no hole, a huge amount of sparkle. It's silver with like iridescent sparkle to it. By the way, you don't have to get these kind of embellishments. I have other ideas for you to share in a moment, but these are the easiest to add to your cards. Studio Katia also has silver foil disc. I know there are gold foil discs out there. Different companies offer this style, and again, no hole, perfectly flat. Trinity Stamps has Celebration Dots Flat Confetti. This is a mix of colors along with silver and gold, so you can pick and choose the colors that match your card. And by the way, I did all the searching for these different options to save you the time, and I have them linked below. Then we have Trinity Stamps Shimmer and Shine Confetti. I use these a lot in videos. Now these are clear with iridescent shine, so the color kind of changes based on the color of cardstock you have behind it. So that's something to keep in mind. It'll match whatever you create. The same goes with the Studio Katia Chunky Dot Glitter, which are big pieces of glitter you can add where you want. Now, in addition to those kind of confettis and dots that are available, you can also make your own using dies and specialty cardstocks. Now, I've done this in a lot of videos. So here are some dies that I reach for often for creating my own little embellishments. You'll notice that a lot of these are background dies that create fun background die cuts. I'm just using the little pieces that fall out. You may not have background dies that cut small little embellishments, but I bet you have other dies that do. Such as this one that is from Waffle Flower. It cuts tiny little butterflies that are great accents. I have used this one for many years from Simon Says Stamp, the mini flower and leaves. These are also 2 of my most used dies, especially that heart one. It cuts hearts or stars in all the different sizes. I encourage you to look at all of your dies and see if any of them cut tiny die cuts that would be great as embellishments. It's a great way to stretch your supplies. Here are the Hero Arts confetti background dies I use a lot. That one that's called Circle Confetti on the left is one I reach for often. I'll use it today. But they also have hearts and stars and butterflies and flowers, lots of options. We have the Sunny Studio Bursting Heart die on the left. That also cuts a lot of little hearts. And then the Crafty Meraki Craft Around die, which cuts little leaf shapes that you could add behind flower die cuts. Now, along with these different dies that cut small die cuts, I recommend using specialty cardstocks. Here are some of my favorites. This is Altenew's Dazzling Diamond Glitter Paper. This is beautiful. It's kind of a champagne silver that works with just about anything. Lots of sparkle to it, and it die cuts beautifully. I also have a holographic cardstock, some gold matte cardstock, and silver matte. What I like to do is keep little scraps of these cardstocks, place them against my die, and run it through my die cut machine, and keep those little die cuts in little containers like the one you see here. I have a lot of these on hand, especially the dots and hearts that are kind of your own DIY embellishments, and they're flat, so there's no bulk to them like you would normally get from gems and pearls. So there are two great options for adding a little sparkle and bling without adding any bulk. Now let's use some of the different ideas I shared with you to finish off the hello, thank you, and make-a-wish cards. I'll be showing you a closer look at the final results with some of these different options. For this first hello card, I am adding some of those multicolor confettis from Trinity stamps. I put a little dot of Gina K liquid adhesive. This is the Connect glue in a fine tip bottle. I have it linked below. That's what I use for almost all of my glue, but definitely for embellishments like this. I then have a pickup stick tool that has a wax tip where you pick up your little embellishments and add them right into the glue. Now this time I'm using some pink at the center of the flowers and then gold scattered around it. Now these are flat enough you could even put them in the inside of your card without damaging the front. And look at that fun sparkle that you get. Very fast to do, and these little embellishments are pretty inexpensive because there are so many included. On my next hello card, I used that Hero Arts Circle Confetti die to cut from holographic cardstock to create all these little tiny holographic dots. You can see some of them are super tiny. I love to add those details. And I scattered quite a few of those around the card. Notice how it captures the light nicely, and I just used a scrap of holographic cardstock to make them. Now for the last of the hello cards, this time I use that Circle Confetti die. I tell you, I use it a lot, with that Altenew diamond glitter cardstock. And look how beautiful that is. I like that it's a soft glitter cardstock. It's not like a really bright silver. A great subtle touch on any card. It's time for our 3 thank you cards. On the first one, I did the same thing I did on my last card. I used the Altenew diamond glitter paper with the Hero Arts confetti circle dies to create those tiny little dots. I bet money you have a die in your collection that creates tiny dots like that. Now this one is a little bit different. I did not use any paper or embellishment on here. This is perfectly flat. For those little dots that you see, I used that glitter pen that I showed you at the beginning of this video, and I just drew little dots. It provides a lot of sparkle, and this is truly a flat, one-layer card with no bulk. So if you want to create fake embellishments, you can do so by using a glitter pen. And then for the last one, I used Trinity Stamps Shimmer and Shine Confetti, which I use a lot in videos. It just seems to match whatever you create. Now I know all of these cards look very similar, but I was just using the opportunity to show you a few different no bulk kind of glittery options. So I thought by doing multiple cards, that was the best way. But we still have that Make-A-Wish card where we popped up the sentiment there in the center. In the confetti in the background, I did also scatter some of those Studio Katia Disco Fever discs. Those are the ones that have a lot of sparkle. And you can see that doesn't add any bulk. You could even put some on the inside, but it adds a lot of detail and a lot of fun. I'm hoping that this video gives you some ideas of stretching your layering stencils, different ways to add details to your projects, and some no bulk sparkle options. And there are a lot of ways you can stretch your supplies in the techniques I shared today. If you are interested in what I used, I do have it linked below in my YouTube description. You can also go to my blog for much more information. I thank you for watching, and I'll see you again very soon, this time with another video.